Kurt Cobain's death was not just the loss of a musician. It was the abrupt silencing of a voice that had come to represent an entire emotional era. In April 1994, the world was told a simple story. Kurt Cobain was found dead in his Seattle home, and his death was ruled a suicide. The case was closed quickly, officially, and with confidence. But closure is not the same as understanding. And more than 3 decades later, understanding still feels incomplete. This story does not exist to prove an alternative conclusion. It does not aim to overturn official records or replace them with speculation. Instead, it exists in the space that remains when certainty feels too clean for a life that was anything but. Kurt Cobain's final days continue to generate questions, not because people want mystery, but because the details refuse to align neatly. This is not a conspiracy story. It is a human one. To understand why Cobain's death continues to feel unresolved, we must first step away from how history often frames him. Kurt Cobain has been frozen in time as a symbol, the tortured artist, the reluctant star, the doomed icon of grunge. But symbols erase complexity. Cobain was not a prophecy fulfilling itself. He was a living person navigating physical pain, addiction, artistic pressure, and a profound discomfort with the identity the world projected onto him. Cobain's rise to fame was meteoric and deeply uncomfortable. Nirvana's success was not gradual, it was explosive. Nevermind turned an underground scene into a global movement almost overnight. Cobain suddenly found himself positioned as the voice of a generation, a role he neither asked for nor wanted. In interviews, he repeatedly expressed frustration with being misunderstood, with his music reduced to slogans, and with audiences who embraced the sound without hearing the message. Yet despite these frustrations, Cobain continued to create. He toured, he recorded, he planned future projects. This is an important detail, often overlooked in hindsight. The idea that Cobain had emotionally checked out of life does not fully align with his actions. Discomfort with fame is not the same as a desire for death. Emotional pain does not always point in a single direction. By early 1994, Cobain's physical health had deteriorated significantly. Chronic stomach pain plagued him, often leaving him debilitated. His struggles with heroin addiction are well documented, but addiction, too, is frequently flattened into narrative shorthand. It is treated as an endpoint rather than a condition, something that erases agency rather than complicates it. Cobain's addiction was real, but it existed alongside moments of clarity, intention, and resistance. In March 1994, Cobain was hospitalized in Rome following what was officially described as an accidental overdose. The incident nearly killed him. At the time, it was publicly framed as an accident, but privately, many close to Cobain were shaken. Some saw it as a warning sign. Others saw it as a cry for help. Cobain himself reportedly described it as a mistake, not an attempt to end his life. What matters most about Rome is not how it is interpreted, but what followed. After returning to the United States, Cobain's life entered a period of instability marked by concern from those around him. Interventions were discussed. Rehabilitation was arranged. People recognized that something needed to change. Cobain entered a rehabilitation facility in Los Angeles shortly after returning, but within days he left. This decision has since become one of the most heavily scrutinized moments in the timeline of his final weeks. Why did he leave? What state of mind was he in? Was it impulsive or deliberate? No definitive answers exist. After leaving rehab, Cobain returned to Seattle. From there, the timeline becomes increasingly fragmented. His movements were inconsistent. His communication was sporadic. Friends and family attempted to locate him, but often failed. This period of absence, those final days before his death, remains one of the most unsettling aspects of the story. On April 8, 1994, Cobain's body was discovered in his home by an electrician who had arrived to install a security system. The official report stated that Cobain had died several days earlier. The cause of death was ruled a self-inflicted gunshot wound. A note was found, addressed to an imaginary childhood friend, expressing exhaustion and emotional detachment from life. The case was closed quickly. But speed is not the same as thoroughness. Over the years, various elements of this scene have been questioned not by internet speculation alone, but by professionals in toxicology, forensic analysis, and criminal investigation. One of the most frequently discussed points involves the levels of heroin reportedly found in Cobain's system. Some experts have argued that such levels would have rendered him physically incapable of performing the actions attributed to him. Others dispute this interpretation, emphasizing tolerance and individual variability. These disagreements do not overturn the official conclusion, but they do complicate it. Another point of contention involves the handwriting analysis of the note. Portions of the note appear consistent with Cobain's handwriting, while others appear stylistically different. Some analysts suggest the note reads more like a letter of resignation from fame than a farewell from life itself. Again, this does not prove an alternative explanation, but it raises questions about interpretation. It is here that many narratives go wrong. Faced with uncertainty, people rush to replace it with certainty of a different kind. Conspiracy becomes comforting. It offers clarity where ambiguity feels unbearable. But clarity achieved through simplification is not truth, it is relief. This story refuses that relief. Cobain's relationships have also been placed under a microscope, often unfairly. His marriage, his friendships, his inner circle all have been dissected in search of blame. But human relationships are rarely linear or easily categorized. Stress, love, conflict, and loyalty often coexist. Assigning responsibility to any one person or factor flattens a reality that was deeply layered. Media coverage following Cobain's death played a crucial role in shaping how the public understood it. Headlines framed his death as inevitable, reinforcing the myth of the doomed artist. This narrative was seductive. It made sense of the pain by giving it a storyline. But it also erased nuance. Cobain himself resisted this myth during his life. He rejected the idea that suffering was glamorous or that destruction was destiny. His music expressed anger, confusion, irony, and vulnerability, but it also expressed humor, defiance, and awareness. To interpret his lyrics as a roadmap to his death is to misunderstand the function of art. Art is not confession, it is translation. What remains most striking about Kurt Cobain's death is not the mystery itself, but the discomfort it produces. Discomfort with not knowing. Discomfort with narratives that feel too neat. Discomfort with the way culture consumes tragedy and then moves on. Some stories resist closure not because the truth is hidden, but because it is complex. Cobain's death exists in that space. Official records provide structure, but emotional truth rarely fits cleanly into paperwork. There is a difference between accepting an explanation and understanding a life. This narrative does not argue that Kurt Cobain did not take his own life. It argues that reducing his death to a single sentence does a disservice to the person he was. Complexity is not denial. Questioning is not disrespect. In many ways, it is the opposite. Kurt Cobain should not be remembered solely for how he died. He should be remembered for how deeply he articulated the emotional contradictions of his time. But as long as unanswered questions remain, they deserve to be acknowledged, not exploited, not sensationalized, but examined with restraint. Some stories are not meant to end with a conclusion. They end with reflection. Kurt Cobain's final hours remain unresolved, not because the truth is unknowable, but because it cannot be reduced. And perhaps that is the most honest way to remember him, not as a myth, not as a martyr, but as a human being whose life, like his music, refuses to be simplified.